See the drivers making their way through the S's here at Circuit of the Americas here in beautiful Austin, Texas. On the pole again, John Dean in that silver and blue MX-5. Jake, all these cars are identically prepared, and the cool thing about it is that it's really put into the driver's hands. And at a portion of the racetrack like the S's, it's going to be fun to see these guys sling it around as they compete here in Austin.
You see him trying to put heat in those tires right now. Interesting, Nick, because as we talked about with Ryan, that air's a little bit thick. There was the possibility of kind of the flirtation with some precipitation today, but you see the sun starting to dance off those windshields. So we know that the sun is peeking out here in Austin. There are some overcast skies, but won't take long for those tires to start to get that grip. And then you notice late in the race, and I saw it last year a number of occasions, you get later in the race, and then all of a sudden you've got to factor in the point that the track might not be as wide as you think because the grip starts to go away a little bit as those tires starts to fall off, and that's where you're really starting to find out just the challenge for the driver to be able to control those identically prepared Mazdas as they sling their way around this 3.4-mile course.
Austin, Texas, Circuit of the Americas, of course, the host for round 1 and 2 for the battery tender Global MX-5 Cup. Next up, they'll head to Birmingham, Alabama for rounds 3 and 4 on April 20th through the 22nd. Then they head to Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and Road America at that 14-turn, 4-mile course in late June. July sees this series head to Lexington, Ohio, a Mid-Ohio sports car course for the 13-turn, 2.2-mile road course. They will join the IndyCar Series in Portland, Oregon in late August, early September for rounds 9 and 10. And then the finale in Monticello Motor Club, that full course, 3.6 mile, 18 turns. That is in late September. But, Jake, it all starts right here in Austin for these drivers. What a thrill as, again, cars are on the racetrack and we're getting set to go racing.
Not in view right now is the pole sitter. That is John Dean II. That's because he has taken down towards the bottom of the racetrack. You get a good look there at Robert Stout, who will be starting in the 3rd position. There is Roland right behind him, car number 87, as we talked about, that Mazda sponsorship that he is promoting throughout his sponsorship over the course of the year. There is the pace car. There you see at the bottom of the racetrack, that is car number 16. That is your pole sitter, John Dean II, as they start to line up and become familiar here, Nick, with their rows before we get to racing here. This is going to be a lot of fun at Circuit of the Americas.
2x2 here at Circuit of the Americas as these super powerful, nifty little cars are set to go racing here at Circuit of the Americas, the battery tender Global MX-5 Cup, 32 of them to be exact. As we see some of those drivers towards the rear of the field, you better believe there's a couple capable drivers in those race cars that can charge their way to the front, but we are just about set to go racing. The pace car and MX-5 as well, which is pretty cool to see. These cars, Jake, really not too different from what you can buy at a Mazda showroom. The series makes a couple adjustments to them to get these cars race ready, and then you can compete as well in the battery tender Global MX-5 Cup. Pace cars off the racetrack, Jake, as we are set to go racing here in Austin.
They start to line up, and you can see bunched very, very close together as they work their way into turn number 1. The pole sitter is John Dean II, working to the bottom of the racetrack. He is going to go ahead and lead a freight train. Looking to the outside is Brian Ortiz. They are going to wait to get that green flag and get to racing. Now they fan out. They work their way here, and we'll see what happens in terms of, looks like he might be sandwiched a little bit. Look for Ortiz on the outside. Now they're going to go 4 wide, Nick, and that is going to shuffle back the pole sitter, John Dean II.
Dean gets shuffled back to 3rd as he gives a little bumper to Brian Ortiz, but it's Robert Stout who emerges up front. Look at this, 2, 3 wide throughout the course of the field, throughout about the top 10 to 15 drivers. Again, Stout takes the lead in corner number 1, but he's got Ortiz to his inside, now his outside, Jake, as they make their way through the S's.
Boy, John Dean II really got shuffled back at that start. He falls from the pole position down to 5th. Now the battle is with Ortiz, and just to his bottom is Robert Stout. Stout going to try to make that move. They are side by side, and again, better line for Ortiz here. Stout going to swing it wide, but Ortiz able to hold him off.
Boy, look at Brian Ortiz. That car steps out just a bit as they're going to go 3 wide for the lead. Ortiz on the outside. It's Nico Rager in that black car with the green cage that goes from third to first. Now you're going to see Roland, the rookie, who looks like he's going to entertain moving into second. He'll give a bump to Rager. As Jake, you can throw a blanket over the front 8 or 9 cars. What an opening lap as they make their way down the long back straightaway here at Circuit of the Americas.
Outstanding move there by Nico Rager, but then all of a sudden, as you mentioned, Roland said, you know what, I'm going to try to do the same thing. This happens a lot at the outset of the race, Nick. Everybody gets frantic. You're starting to feel maybe you're not completely aware of the grip your car has. Now look at this move. Roland going to use every ounce of the racetrack to try to close in now, and suddenly Nico Rager has his mirrors full, and that rookie is giving him everything he wants.
Roland couldn't make a move to the inside because he had Brian Ortiz already there in that white and green car. So move Ortiz, who started second, was shuffled back. He gets back to the second position as they're all chasing Nico Rager here at Circuit of the Americas. Roland has moved into the third spot, or I should say kicked back to the third spot. Here comes our pole sitter, though, Jake, as he's beating and banging with Robert Stout for the fourth spot.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's back in the mix, isn't he? You wonder, Nick, at this point as you watch, you see the jockeying, you see everybody using every inch of the racetrack, and now all of a sudden you see a big push up towards the front, and up towards the front, again, Nico Rager has to hold off, gets himself a little bit coming off the corner of an advantage, but you wonder how much of this is each driver just figuring out still where exactly their car they can most trust it.
Boy, look at those drivers use every bit of the racetrack at the exit of the final corner as they cross the start-finish line to complete lap number 1. It's going to be Nico Rager followed by Brian Ortiz, but here comes that rookie, Celine Roland, who's going to take a look for third, thinks better of it, pops back to the outside. But you're right, Jake, what a furious first lap. Now we're starting to see these drivers start to file single file and maybe establish a bit of a race pace. But here comes Robert Stout and that blue and white number 28 as he's entertaining thoughts for third.
Can't make that move, though. Roland holds him off. You look at Celine Roland. We're talking about the rookie here running in third. Pretty good gap now from first, second, and then that third-place machine that you look at, car number 87. There's a great look at it there, the 6 sideways entry. In talking about that rookie, Nick, I guess the question becomes, and we won't know it until getting a chance to talk to them after, is this a guy that has the most confidence at this point in his car in putting it anywhere on the track, or is it perhaps a rookie who doesn't yet know exactly the points where his car should or should not go and therefore is willing to tempt or test every aspect of the track? Either way, working out well for him now as he runs in third.
I'm guessing the answer to that question is probably a little bit of both. I mean, certainly he's shown the speed as, again, he is hanging that car awful wide at the exit of that corner, but he's making it work running in third. As a rookie, you're right. You don't know the limits of this race car, but Jake, he's been impressive on this opening weekend. Qualified fourth as a rookie, easily the highest qualifying rookie in this field. Kyle Kimball was the second highest rookie who qualified in the 10th position. So Roland and that Soul Red Mazda is going to be fun to watch all year long. And you're right, as a rookie, there's some things that he's not going to know, but so far he's hanging with the best in the MX-5 series here up front.
Look who all of a sudden is getting back into the fight. That's the pole sitter, John Dean II. That's that car that you see with the gray Mazda up front, running in the 4th position, but not letting that front 3 out of sight. Just worked his way around Robert Stout. Stout now has his hands full because Todd Lamb is going to try to make a move as well.
Yeah, boy, things stacked up big time there at that left-hander as Todd Lamb had to jump on the brakes, and he gave a little shot there to Robert Stout. Lamb's got his hands full, though, as that 34 car of Joey Bickers moves to the inside, and then you've got Hernan Palermo and that bright green car. We already see a little bit of damage, Jake, to the left rear quarter panel of that car. And again, I think that chalk that up to the fact that these guys are running so hard. We're seeing them move all over the racetrack, and they can lean on each other a little bit with these MX-5s.
Elevation changes, just one of the things that you have to navigate your way through. Of course, you see there a little bit of dust getting kicked up should you get too far to the outside. It is a 20-turn course, 3.4 miles, one time a tour here around Circuit of the Americas. And right now, the one who is doing it up front, Nico Rager running with the lead, then Brian Ortiz We talked about the running in third place machine. That is the rookie Celine Roland, and then behind him you have John Dean the second, followed by Robert Stout.
Pretty interested watching Brian Ortiz kind of run right behind Rager, right in tow, right, able to draft right behind him. I think he's got a car that's probably good enough to pull out and pass, but for some of these drivers, Jake, they want to establish a pace. We saw a lot of chaos there in the first opening lap and lap and a half, and the drivers up front starting to separate a little bit. So we saw it looked like a 3 or 4 car breakaway, but further back, they're getting awful racy as Palermo in that green car has his hands full. He also wants to be aggressive, trying to get around Todd Lamb and that black and blue Mazda MX-5. Lamb's another one of those drivers, Jake, that has competed in this series for many, many years and is a former champion in the Global MX-5 Cup.
I think the thing about the MX-5 Cup, we learned it last year with Patrick Gallagher, I know, in talking to him on a number of occasions. Just when you think you've got it figured out, something new pops up, Nick, and you're figuring out something different, whether it be a new racetrack or just the way a car felt, looking at a different passing line. That's part of the advantage and at times disadvantage of having these cars that are so identically set up, in the fact that there are always challenges. Challenge right now is Brian Ortiz trying to challenge for the lead, but again, he's not able to make that move. Nico Rager able to hold him off.
Yeah, look a little bit further back in the pack. Todd Lamb a little bit oversteer as he's got to get on the wheel to control that Mazda MX-5. He took a pretty good shot from Palermo leading into that long back straightaway. And there's Nathaniel Sparks, Jake. We haven't talked about him yet in car number 8, that white, green, and black MX-5. Another one of those former series champions. Sparks got shuffled back. He started in the 6th position, kind of tumbled through the field outside the top 10. Now he's trying to claw his way back up as right now Sparks sits in that 10th position, hounding the 34 machine of Joey Bickers.
Yeah, Joey Bickers, who had dropped a couple of spots from the last time by. He had finished in, or he was running in 7th at the completion of the last lap, but now all of a sudden he's got his hands full, as you had mentioned, and now we start to see a bunch up towards the front. Nico Rager has company all of a sudden. He can't afford to make any sort of a mistake because Brian Ortiz is there. They're going to try to go either side of him, but no, Roland decides to tuck in and keep that 3 spot.
Oh, it's amazing. We saw Roland use every bit of the racetrack. I think that rookie had all 4 tires off of the racetrack, but he's getting a nice push from John Dean as they draft their way up through turn number 1 as he tries to get around Ortiz. Ortiz gives Rager a shot. Ortiz takes a hit in the back from Roland. Jake, it's stacking things up as Robert Stout and John Dean, they're in 4th and 5th, watching these guys play bumper cars through turn number 1.
You get the feeling John Dean is saying to himself inside his cockpit to that rookie Roland, look, which way are you going to go here?
No
because
doubt.
Each time he's trying to tuck in behind him, Roland using all of the racetrack. That's exactly what Nico Rager is doing as well. He's got Brian Ortiz just behind him here. Really good battle with those 1-2. Looks like Rager's got a pretty good feel, though, right now, Nick, for where his car is, and Ortiz is the one that's obviously playing catch-up, but just trying to use every angle he can.
I think Rager's doing a really nice job, but at the same time, Ortiz is biding his time because we start to see him move around the racetrack, look left, look right at some potential passing spots. This is a fairly long race. We're got 36 minutes to go. It's a 45-minute timed event, and now we see Ortiz right over the back bumper of Rager's car as they set up for that long back straightaway. I think both of those guys are in comfortable positions, and a little drafting here down the back straightaway can give them a little breathing room away from that rookie Roland and that Soul Red car.
Obviously just working into the first quarter of this race, but that podium, if you will, seemed to be fairly comfortable because then you had the pole sitter running in 4th, but now all of a sudden we've got a swap up front, change for the lead, put Brian Ortiz up front.
Ortiz used the big draft down the back straightaway to run right up on the back of that black Mazda, move to driver's left, and he took the lead away, and now we've got one car, Jake, buried in the sand. That is car number 27, Ari Strauss, who has gotten sideways and has gone way off of the racetrack, and that car looks like it was buried as we're seeing. It looks like a yellow flag here at Circuit of the Americas.
Ari Strauss is going to need indeed some help, one would assume, to get that McAleer Racing machine out. That's car number 27, and you saw as they were going past, one of the drivers had seen the problem and went ahead and flagged. There you see, as we take a look at it, looks like Nico Rager's got a little bit of extra what's that, like a belt or a flap that's come loose here, but that's one of the things that happens over the course of these races.
Yeah, I think that's just part of the carbon fiber of the body work that goes up and over the roll cage that they put in these race cars. It's kind of batting back and forth, but he was actually the driver that was waving to try to signal to the drivers behind him to slow up for the full course yellow, as obviously with that 27 car of Strauss buried in the kitty litter, as we call it, they're going to have to go retrieve that. So the field going to make their way up the hill to turn number 1, where the pace car will pick them up. 4 laps complete here, Jake. Nico Rager has led 3 of them. Brian Ortiz just leads his first lap of the event. Roland runs in the 3rd spot. John Dean is 4th. Robert Stout is 5th. Hernan Palermo runs in the 6th spot. Joey Bickers, who's been an interesting and fun guy to watch, runs in 7th so far. Brian Henderson with a good run, as Henderson, let's see, he started in the 14th position, and he has moved up to 8th, so he's been strong. You got Sparks there in 9th, and Luke Oxner rounding out the top 10.
Luke Oxner already an active day as well, Nick. I think that's one of the things about this series. Really, at no point do you ever get yourself any sort of a breathing room where you can just kind of relax and turn a lap, where you don't have one of those identically prepared cars on either side of you. So you're constantly dealing with some sort of a traffic, whether it be dirty air. It's very, very, if you want clean air and you want to try to get yourself through, you're going to have to do it by getting up front.
See the Circuit of America's safety team out there. Got a strap connected to the front of that 27 car, as they're going to try to pull that car out of the sand as we are working a caution here in Austin. As we mentioned, 3rd member of our crew is Ryan Marine, who's pit side here at Circuit of Americas.
That's right, guys. Talking to Mo Murray from Mazda Motorsports. I'll tell you what a glorious field you guys have assembled once again in this Global MX-5 Series. Got to be awfully proud of what you put on track here at COTA.
Absolutely. 32 cars here for the opening round of the season. And a very, very strong field. The level of talent is very, very deep. We introduced the Challenger class this year to give some of the guys in the second half of the field something to shoot for, but frankly, we don't really need it because the talent level is really, really deep here.
And the racing has been so close over the last several years. It comes down to, less than 5 seconds margin of victory between all of the races last year?
That's correct. All of the races put together, the margin of victory is about 5 seconds. And here's why. The cars are all built by the same builder. The Global MX-5 Cup cars are all built by Long Road Racing in Statesville, North Carolina. And the parity in this series is incredible. When these guys, after 3 days of testing, can go out here and be separated by hundredths of a second, the parity of the cars is phenomenal. And that's what makes the racing so good in this series.
How important is this in the global picture of Mazda's motorsports programs?
Very, very important. This is a critical component of Mazda's approach to motorsports. For Mazda Motorsports is it's something that it's in our DNA. It's something we've always done. Mazda has a long and rich heritage.
So working a caution, appreciate that, Ryan. Mo Murray, great ambassador for this series. He is Mr. MX-5 Cup, in my opinion, Jake, as he's been a big help helping us learn about this series, and it's been a lot of fun to get to know Mo. So know those guys are enjoying it down there on pit lane, as, again, we're working a caution here. This is the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup presented by BF Goodrich Tires. And Mo talks about these race cars, Jake, and it's been fun so far watching these drivers rotate these cars through the corners. You see them lean over on the left and right tires, and certainly these guys are ready to get back to going racing here at Circuit of the Americas, as everybody's chasing Brian Ortiz early on.
Everybody was chasing John Dean II at the outset of this race. He was the pole sitter, but he got shuffled back to 5th position, has worked his way back now into 4th. Top 3 again, Brian Ortiz, then Nico Rager, followed by Celine Roland. Now, in terms of up front, I'll be honest with you, Nick, Nico Rager, to me, I thought was the most impressive in, we'll call it that first stint, if you will. Seemed as though he had the best control, the best speed on his car. But as you mentioned, you see on that 01, there on the passenger side, if you will, right side of that car, he does have part of that bordering, if you will, that windshield border that has come loose a little bit. Does it affect him aerodynamically? Probably not, but nonetheless, Rager was very, very strong, I thought, in that first set.
Yeah, that opening lap was a lot of fun as we saw him, spread out and go 4 or 5 wide, using up every lane that you can find in the run up the hill towards turn number 1. Excited to see what we're going to see when we go back racing here to see if some drivers fan out and try to do the same. But I agree, Rager was really impressive jumping to the lead from the 7th starting position on the opening lap, found his way up front, worked his way into the top spot, and then for Ortiz, kind of stalked him a little bit, ran behind him for a couple laps, and made that pass right before we got the caution, so it was perfect timing for Brian Ortiz. But Ortiz is a guy that's been around this series now for a couple years, Jake. He knows that this race is far from over. Just because you get to the top spot, it's awful tough to keep that lead here in MX-5 because all these cars are so even and all these drivers are so talented.
You want to win every race. That's the natural tendency of a racer. You also want to learn every race, Nick, and let's talk about the opportunity just even on this restart that presents itself for that rookie running in third. And we're talking about Roland. He's sitting right there. He has 2 drivers in front of him, as you talked about, in Brian Ortiz and Nico Rager. The temptation is going to be to make the move, try to put yourself in first or second position. But at the same time, what an opportunity to just watch where the veterans who have been through this series are going and the way they're handling their cars themselves. Great opportunity for him here. If nothing else, you want to make up the track position. But if you don't make up the track position, simply to be able to observe and learn.
Yeah, I think that's big. It's big for any rookie in a series to learn as much as they can. But I think these drivers also understand that this championship is so competitive that even if you're a rookie, you don't want to take too much time just learning. You want to get racy up front and try to compete for championships. That's what makes this series so very, very interesting and fun to watch. So, yeah, this restart's going to be a lot of fun. When they come out of that final corner, it's a good little haul to the start-finish line. So I don't think I think we'll probably see 10 to 15 drivers on the front straightaway, and that's when that timing game begins, Jake, where everyone's trying to get a jump on the car ahead of them. But if the start of this race is anything, has shown us anything, it's that these restarts are going to be just as fun. Obviously, they're going to be single file, but I don't think we're going to stay that way very long as they make their way up the hill to turn 1.
Of course, you can't sit in the third position and try too much simply to learn because you have a pole sitter just behind you that is ready and able, obviously, in a fast car to pounce. Talking about John Dean II. Everybody starting to warm those tires back up, get a little bit of heat in them, and find out exactly what is underneath that Mazda MX-5 machine in terms of the power to try to get them perhaps to make up some track position here. There's a good look at running right now. That's that third place rookie. That is Celine Roland. Just in front of him, of course, Nico Rager. Brian Ortiz is the leader. Everybody getting anxious here to get back to racing at the Circuit of the Americas.
Yep, Roland, of course, the driver from Orlando, Florida, rookie of this series, driving for Six Sideways Racing with that Mazda Road to 24 scholarship that he earned, that gave him an opportunity to compete in this series.
I need to figure out
our pole sitter, I should say our leader now, Brian Ortiz, started the outside of the front row, as you mentioned, Jake, trying to get any marbles off of those tires. We see him weaving back and forth, but it's going to be a fun restart. These guys haven't been able to get away from each other early in this race. They've been like magnets. It's what makes this racing so much fun and so exciting for these fans. And we'll see if any of these drivers are able to work together to get breakaways. There's a couple long straightaways where you can do a little drafting, but so far we've seen them really lean in front bumpers to back bumpers, and it's been an awful competitive race.
Six Sideways Racing, you'd mentioned. They have 4 entries in this race. Roland, who we've talked a lot about, also Ryan Hall running for that team. Additionally for the team, Brooks Leal running for them, and John Dean II, the pole sitter, Nathaniel Sparks as well. So Ashton Harrison, who is the only female in the race. So more than 4, actually, but a handful of them from a team dedicated here. Back to racing, and again, Ortiz is going to have behind him Nico Rager. They go single file. There's the green flag. We're going to see if Rager tries to make a move and exactly where Roland's going to try to go with him. This field, you would think, is going to fan out here shortly, but everybody right now minding their P's and Q's, except Nick for that pole sitter trying to get that third spot back.
Well, we saw a lot of cars getting sideways at the exit. Yeah, there it is. I thought I saw that out of the corner of my eye. Number 97, Brian Henderson got a little sideways exiting right on the start. He hits the throttle, Jake. He gets wide. That car it spins to the outside. He overcorrected it and spun to the exit of that final corner. So Henderson, if he can get that car restarted, all the momentum is gone. Back up front, though, it is Brian Ortiz who has the lead still. Rager trying to run him down as those two have broken away just a bit. But boy, what a tough break for Henderson, who was running in the top 10.
Track stays green throughout. That allows Ortiz to hold on to that lead. Rager was not able to make up any ground. Then behind him, you see the third spot now taken by John Dean the second. Those front three go through. Then there's that rookie Roland running in the fourth position. But really good restart there for Ortiz, and Rager you thought might be able to make up some ground, but so far holding back just a little bit.
Yeah, that was impressive. Both of those drivers got really good runs up the front straightaway, up the hill to turn number 1, and I think it gave them a little bit of breathing room. They didn't have to lean on each other nearly as much as they try to establish a bit of a pace as we're nearing the halfway point of this race time-wise. So it is Ortiz, Rager, and then Dean, as we mentioned, who moved into the third position. They make their way down the long back straightaways. Dean starting to get a run on that second place running machine of Rager, Jake.
Boy, Rager is indeed getting his mirrors full. As a matter of fact, looks like right now that Dean might have the better machine, but gets hung out just a little bit. Roland goes now down to the inside to try to find out exactly where that pole sitter is going to go. This is the battle for the third position. So just when John Dean the second thought he was going to be able to flex some muscle and move his way up into the battle for second, he's got his hands full for a battle for third.
Yeah, how about this battle for fifth as well, as Robert Stout looks like he's going to be able to hold off Hernan Palermo in that green car as they got a little racy. That allows Stout to try to narrow his focus on the fourth place running car of Roland as they make their way around this very long course here in Austin, Texas. All these drivers minding their P's and Q's. And one of the things that I've noticed, Jake, is we see the drafting down the long straightaways, and then once they get to the braking portion of the racetrack, there's a lot of checking up. These guys don't want to run into each other, but it's awful hard to do at the speeds these guys are carrying. And again, they're using up all of that racetrack. Best battle, though, Jake, is certainly for second, as here comes John Dean.
John Dean going to try to go to the bottom. This would allow him to try to get past Nico Rager. That is the battle for second. You see it coming into view here, and Dean's going to make that move. Boy, it almost looked like Nico Rager just said, you know what, I don't have the horsepower right now. You go ahead and go by.
I think you're exactly right, Jake. He got off the throttle early, and it allows him to carry the horsepower all the way back around Dean and to take the lead. Boy, I don't know what happened to Brian Ortiz there at the exit of turn number 1, but he went from first, and he's been shuffled all the way back to the fourth position, Jake. What a great battle up front.
Man, what a move. Nico Rager with a little cat and mouse there. You go ahead and get past, and then guess what? I'm going to go ahead and take it to the outside and sling past, get that aerodynamic, and put myself, involve myself not only into the lead now, but a comfortable one over John Dean the second. Then you see Roland right there, then Ortiz.
Whoa, and Palermo puts the right side tires off the racetrack as he's trying to get around Stout. As these drivers fan out, Palermo is going to keep that green car to the inside as he tries to get a run to the inside of Stout. He's got a car to his outside. But boy, what an interesting lap for Ortiz, Jake, as he's got his hands full as all these drivers bounce their way down out of the corner and down this long back straightaway.
Saw a big piece of debris fly off there. Not sure if that's the one from Rager's car or not. But again, let's go back to, I want to talk about Palermo. That last turn and the exchange seemed to kind of befit as we see another battle for the lead here. Almost going to go 4 wide, and guess what? Your pole sitter is back up now in front. That is John Dean the second with Ortiz just behind him. There's going to be a lot of interchange here, but Palermo has at one point fallen back towards the bottom half of the top 10, now finds himself back in position where he is running in 6th.
Yeah, boy, I wasn't sure if Brian Ortiz was going to be able to get that white and green car slowed down as he made that big jump from 4th all the way to 2nd as John Dean took the lead. Or Nico Rager, he just gets shuffled from the front to the back. It's been a fun race to watch so far as, again, about the top 10 cars all within about a second. 4 seconds to be exact, back to Keith Jensen as John Dean, that car gets a little sideways. It looked like Ortiz was going to take a look to the inside up front. Good battle for the lead.
Boy, this is really good stuff to watch right now. Ortiz this time, it almost seems like up front, it's, hey, you know what? Maybe there's some aerodynamics there where teams have figured out or drivers have figured out. You go by for a second, I'll let you lead sort things out, and then I'll use the aerodynamics now, because Ortiz is getting all kinds of activity from Dean. They're going to go literally side by side. Roland's going to try to figure out what they're going to do.
And watch this run into turn one. It's one of the most unique corners in all of motorsports because there are so many different ways that you can attack it. And we saw Rager go from third to the lead on the previous lap. He's not going to get nearly as good of a run. He's right on the back of Dean running in second, but it's Ortiz who makes the move into the lead.
So the leader is Ortiz. There's that extra apron, Nick, off turn number one that's interesting, because when they're going into the turn, you think that it's about to tighten up, and then all of a sudden you realize there's a lot more racetrack there to the outside, and obviously all of them are trying to use any inch they can in that area.
Well, and all that racetrack disappears as they make their way back down the hill and they get towards the S's part of this racetrack. And then all of a sudden, you got to try to get single file as Rager's got his hands full. It looked like he got the left side tires off the ground. Up front, though, Dean's looking to the inside. He's going to try to make the move to take the lead back around Ortiz.
Roland is going to take a good look at that battle and figure out where he wants to go. He's going to try to go with Dean down to the inside, but Ortiz is there to the outside, so they are literally side by side for second, but now Ortiz is going to be able to clear that. Roland tucks in behind.
God, this is just fantastic stuff as it's a bit of a three-car breakaway up front for the lead as we are under 19 minutes to go. Ortiz moves to the inside. They're going to go side by side, he and Dean. Ortiz takes that top spot. Now it's Roland who's going to take a look to the inside for second. Gives the leader a good little shot there, Jake, at the exit as they run out.
Boy, Roland now allows those two to kind of get away from him just a little bit, and he's got to be careful because Nico Rager, who we know has a fast car, is running in fourth. Good battle for fifth just behind them. That Robert Stout holds that position for right now, but I'll tell you what, 1 through about 6, Nick, you get the feeling that all of those cars, 1 through 6, at any point, just depending on the aerodynamics of it and perhaps any sort of adjustment that can be made, can find themselves getting up a position.
It's fun, Jake. I know this is an analogy you've used for years. It's like a rubber band. Yep. Nobody can get away, and as soon as they get racy for the lead, all of a sudden, 4th, 5th, and 6th are right there on the back bumpers. So it's going to be an entertaining run to the finish of this event as we see the drivers a little bit further back, making their way back onto the front straightaway here. Again, it's Ortiz, Dean, and then Roland running in the 3rd position. Roland may have a challenge from Rager, though, as they make their way up the hill.
The other thing that you have to keep in mind now is they work their way in towards the 28th minute of this race, and that is you now have a comfortable layer, one would think, of that BF Goodrich rubber that's being laid down, Nick, that is in grip with the tires of the cars themselves, because there are other series that are running here at Circuit of the Americas this weekend that gets kind of that different rubber compound laid down. But these cars comfortable with those BF Goodrich, and that BF Goodrich rubber now, one would think, has a pretty good coating that is allowing them to grip here as they take each turn in this 20-turn course.
Those aren't all-terrain tires, but sometimes they might need to be because these drivers routinely here so far today have put the right sides off in certain spots of the racetrack, left sides off in other spots. Brian Ortiz doing a great job, though, making his way through the S's, and I think John Dean has a really fast race car. He was the pole sitter for a good reason, as he's really hounding Ortiz around this racetrack here in Austin, Texas. Ortiz takes a bit of a defensive line as he moves to the inside. He did that in turn number 1 on this same lap, Jake, and I think it's kind of throwing John Dean's depth perception off of when he can make a move. It's always harder to pass a guy on the outside.
Pretty savvy veteran that you've got there in the form of Brian Ortiz, because he's been around here a little bit, and John Dean, I think, knows that, and everybody now goes single file. Fantastic look at this venue, and just as we talk about that, Ortiz now all of a sudden going to get that challenge. This time it's the pole sitter, and he's going to be able to comfortably make that move, although Ortiz said, well, I'm not so sure, gave him a little bit of a tap, and now just behind him, guess what? Roland's going to do the same thing to Ortiz, but he gives up a track position. There goes Nico Rager.
Roland's got to be so frustrated because I think he knows down that long back straightaway he can use the draft to move into second, but what a darting move to the inside there as he gets back around Rager as Roland, he's a rookie, Jake, but he is making that car work for him as they battle for third. He's got Rager there looking to the outside, but that Soul Red Mazda darting around this racetrack as he gets back to the 3rd spot, which he's held here for the last few laps.
All of a sudden now 30 minutes into this race, we're back to where we started. That's with John Dean the second up front, Brian Ortiz just behind him, then Roland running in 3rd. Let's call that about a 2-car length gap between second and third position. But Nico Rager, who has been very, very active today, finds himself in the 4th position.
We have technically had 2 leaders in this race. Brian Ortiz has led 6 laps, 3 laps for Nico Rager, and now John Dean makes it a 3rd official leader as he moves into the top spot. He'll work that inside line to try to defend Ortiz through turn number 1. All those drivers swing wide around the red and white curbing to the outside of turn number 1, and now back down the hill headed for the S's.
Nick, how much fun is this? I mean, this is the first of a doubleheader for this weekend, one of a handful of doubleheaders that are going to be taking place over the course of the season for the MX-5 Cup. This is just the start of it, but you can see these guys are not leaving anything out on the track, guys and gals.
And for these drivers, a lot of them we saw run a year ago, Jake, I'm sure are awful hungry. They're glad to see Patrick Gallagher out of this series.
Absolutely.
Because Gallagher racked up quite a few trophies en route to the championship.
They were happy to see him get that scholarship money.
No doubt about it. So you've got guys like Dean and Ortiz and Rager and Stout who were up front all last season. Now that Gallagher's out of the series, they realize, hey, we can step up and be the driver to watch this year. As again, Ortiz all over the back bumper, taking a look to the inside as Dean's going to run a little wide as they set up for the backstretch.
It's the first of 6 doubleheader weekends over the course of the season in the run for the championship, with all races being scored separately. Right now, the scoring that we watch is up front, and that's where there has been almost rotation of leader, if you will, and we might see it again. Ortiz going to battle for the lead.
Boy, this is a lot of fun watching these drivers make their way down this backstretch for this tight left-hander. Looks like they're going to go 3 wide for second as Rager moves to the inside. The rookie Roland has to give way and gives up that 3rd spot for now. He battles back on the inside. You got a couple more cars. That's Stout and Bickers running in 5th and 6th. And Jake, we've reached a portion of this race with 13 minutes to go. These drivers are starting to feel each other out, start to pick their spots, because there is no doubt the last lap's going to be a fury as they run to the checkered flag.
You see how close a line to the bottom of the track that Nico Rager was taking. Now he swings it a little bit outside. He runs in the 4th position. He's got all kinds of business behind him. As a matter of fact, that is Bickers that you talked about, trying to close in on that 4th spot. Taking a look up front again, it is Ortiz. Ortiz got a little bit of an advantage that time by with John Dean the 2nd, but Dean the 2nd again with that rookie giving him all kinds of looks in the battle for 3rd.
Pretty impressed with those drivers running 5th and 6th. That is Joey Bickers, the driver from Moore Park, California, and Robert Stout, the driver from Palm Springs, California, teammates for McCumbee McAleer Racing. They, of course, were the championship team 1 year ago with Patrick Gallagher. But again, setting up for turn number 1. Everybody starts to move to the left and the right. And again, how about that move to the inside, taking that 4th spot away? Joey Bickers looks awful hungry, Jake, as Lamb puts the right sides off. That's Dean puts the right sides off. He gets a little sideways, evasive maneuvers, and all of a sudden the rookie Roland has taken the lead.
Roland takes the lead. This is, of course, the driver that is here because he had to win just to get entry, and now all of a sudden he decided it was go time heading in towards the final 11 minutes of this race. That is the rookie. Taking a look at him right there, we're talking about Celine Roland, who had to go through. He had to just get the opportunity here by winning and running in that sponsored car, and that's exactly what he's doing. He has the lead now over Brian Ortiz.
Boy, he bounced it over the curbing there through the S's, and that upset the balance of the race car. That allows Ortiz to get a strong charge to the outside. Roland's not going to give. Who's going to break first? The rookie sticks it on the inside. He's going to hold off Ortiz at the exit as they set up for the back straightaway. But again, Jake, keep your eye on that 3rd place running car as Joey Bickers has gotten awful racy. He's charged from outside the top 5. Now he's in 3rd with a chance to challenge for the top spot.
Celine Roland running up front of that Soul Red car said, guys, I had to win the 2018 Mazda Club Racer Shootout just to get here, and so now let's see what you can do against me. They're going to try to go 3 wide, but again, he darts down to the bottom of the track. Ortiz now starts to swing it wide. He's got all kinds of company. Joey Bickers, really good run for Bickers here to get back in the fight now.
They were side by side for 2nd. They were 3 wide for 4th. Also looked like they were 3 wide. They're still 3 wide for 7th, a little bit further back with Palermo and Sparks back there. Right now, Jake, you can throw an absolute blank make it over the top 9 cars as we see. There's that battle for 7th. Palermo in that green car. Sparks is up there, and Luke Oxner running in the 9th spot.
Nico Rager, who in the first third of this race seemed to have the best car, now all of a sudden finds himself running in the 5th position. The leader up front, that is the rookie that we talked about, Celine Roland. He is trying to hold off John Dean the second. The advantage right now as we have a caution out on the track, just as that rookie was trying to build up a third of a second advantage.
Yeah, we saw the drivers put their hands up to let the drivers know behind that there is a caution, and we see Ted Salee, who has parked that number 55 car off course. So that's going to bring out another full course caution as they'll have to retrieve that car. These are really light race cars, Jake, and when they get in that sand trap, they get stuck and going to need a little help. But boy, what a fantastic race as we've got 9.5 minutes to go. No doubt we're going to get this one restarted. That shouldn't be an issue, but boy, the racing up front has just been fantastic as you're getting a look at, there was actually a 2-car accident that brought out the yellow.
Boy, it looks like a couple of them got really close there. Alex Walensky was the other involved. Fortunately, no major contact, everybody able to get through. But now comes the other challenge of these cars, Nick, and that is when you're running at high speed, you're running and you're getting some heat in those tires, then all of a sudden you got to slow it down a little bit. Not only do you have the challenge of the restart, but also how is the car going to respond? Now, ideally and in a perfect world, the answer is everyone's the same because the cars are all the same, but that doesn't necessarily mean the way they've been handled throughout the course of the race, that's the response they're going to get.
I think the guy who likes his car the most right now is Joey Bickers, who has really been mixing it up, and he knows that he's got a rookie right there in front of him in Celine Roland, who's going to try to hold off to score the win here to kick off the season in Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup. But Bickers has been awful impressive as he's moved that car left and right, picked his way through the field, started in the 5th spot. He didn't stay there as the flurry of action kicked him, looked like outside of the top 10, but now all of a sudden in that blue and silver machine, that MX-5 is looking awful racy as he certainly is going to be a guy to try to challenge for this win. Ortiz is still up there. John Dean was up there. Boy, I thought John Dean was going to go for a ride there, Jake, at the exit of turn number 1 when he got super wide on the racetrack that allowed Roland to take that top spot. But, boy, it's going to be a fabulous run to the finish as they have gotten that number 55 car of Ted Salee out of the gravel as one of the tow trucks, the pull trucks, can get him out of there. They're going to try to restart that car so we can go back racing here in Austin.
Got to figure that the driver that most looked up and saw that caution flag and thought, no, had to be probably Roland because he was starting to really get into a nice groove there. Bickers that you talked about, Nick, going to be really interesting to see what he can do. I think you're onto something. I think right now he might have the best setup in terms of the way that his car is handling. But that was perhaps handling in just kind of that dirty air. Now all of a sudden, if he gets in a position where he's going wide, he's in clean air, how's that car going to respond? He's going to have to find that out here.
Here's the glass half full for Roland. Of course, he maybe didn't want to see that caution come out because now it allows these guys to stack up. But the truth is, they were already stacked up behind him. And as we run under yellow, right now, Jake, it's just milking that clock a little bit. And if he only has to hold off those drivers for, say, 2 laps instead of 3 or 4, I think that's a big advantage for that rookie. So, yeah, nobody wants to see the caution come out, especially when you're leading the race. But with the way these guys have been battling throughout the field, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for that rookie to settle down a little bit, recharge, and get ready for this final run to the finish.
Joey Bickers back there in the 2nd position. You saw him trying to get some heat in those tires as we talked about in Moore Park, California. McCumbee McAclear Racing, the sponsor, as he tries to find his way around. He's got 1 car to get around. We're entering the closing minutes, 6 minutes to go here in this particular race. Race number 1 of this doubleheader weekend. The second one will be, of course, tomorrow at Circuit of the Americas. But Nick, this one for a season opener has absolutely lived up to the billing.
Has not disappointed, that's for sure, as these 32 drivers have put on a really, really entertaining race here in Austin, Texas at Circuit of the Americas. This is the 2nd full course caution that we have had today. The first one was for a spin for Ari Strauss. And the second one most recently for Ted Salee. There's a look at the pole sitter. Jake, John Dean, a former champion of this series, has had an interesting day. Started from the pole, immediately lost that lead. In fact, as I mentioned a minute ago, finally led his first lap of this event just moments ago, but he hasn't gotten shuffled out It's been big as he's has a chance, I should say, to still win this race.
You know what's funny is you think to yourself that rookie up front is probably radioing in saying, there's more debris on 18. But then again, Nick, I think these guys want to go racing. It's been so much fun to watch. I can only imagine what it's like to be inside the car. And no matter where you are on the grid, no matter where you are in terms of this field, you've got cars around you. And it looks like now, as they get things cleared off, that we are indeed about to see a dash to the finish here in the last few minutes.
Yeah, nice to see that despite the fact, the bad news for Ted Salee was that he couldn't get that car refired. Good news is they had a wrecker there that could pull that car safely off of the racetrack. They don't have to take it all the way back to pit lane in the paddock. So we see one hand being held out the right side of that pace car as they make their way back up to turn number 1. So we're going to get one more lap, Jake, under slow caution circumstances, and with 4.5 minutes left, that's probably looking at 1 or 2 laps for these guys to battle it out for the win. This, of course, as you mentioned, race number 1, another race tomorrow, same platforms that you're watching. Join us tomorrow for race number 2, and if it's as good as we've seen today, it's going to be quite the season here in the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup presented by BF Goodrich.
See that number 1 finger held out? One of these drivers will be able to hold out exactly that in just under 5 minutes from now to be able to say they have won race number 1. Nick, question becomes, I know we talk about the fact, the old cliche in racing, races aren't necessarily won in the first turn. That's on the first lap. Now, on this restart, it may be interesting to see what happens when they go into that first turn and what the approach is. Do you go for it there, or do you wait and then try to make your pounds?
My guess is these guys are going to be aggressive, and there may be some number 1 fingers stuck out the window.
That's right.
May not be the one that we're
of a
seeing.
Different variation, right?
Absolutely, but yeah, I mean, these guys are going to lean on each other. I think the cool thing is these guys are comfortable at this point, not only with the racetrack, but with their race cars. They know how they're running. Yeah, you're going to have to get a little more heat in those tires, get the marbles off, so you can make that car stick through the left-hander of turn number 1. But I think these drivers, at this point of this race, Jake, they know the limits, especially up front. The front 6-7 guys, they've been running nose to tail, side by side throughout the course of this event. So I think there's probably a little bit of mutual respect. They know what they're going to do, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have a lot of fun here in the final few minutes of this race.
Again, let's look at the leaderboard right now. Celine Rollin, the rookie, running up front. And just behind him, you have Joey Bickers, then Brian Ortiz, John Dean the second, Nico Rager, Robert Stout, and Herman Palermo running in the 7th spot. Nathaniel Sparks, Luke Oxner, a couple of veterans running 8th and 9th. Keith Jensen holding up in the 10th position, rounding out the top 10. Looking for the last couple of minutes here. It literally may be a 1-lap shootout to decide this race number 1 at Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, according to our timing and scoring chart right now, we've got about 2.5 minutes, so this is going to be awful interesting here in Austin, Texas, as we're going to try to put the finishing touches on this opening round race of the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup presented by BF Goodrich. We've seen these drivers use up every inch of this racetrack as the rookie Celine Rollin, the Mazda Scholarship winner, has been absolutely phenomenal to watch so far today as he started in the 4th position. I think kind of picked his spots. He settled in 3rd for a majority of this race, and then on a great move in turn number 1, went from 3rd to the lead, and now Jake, he'll try to hold on to win his first career race in this series.
Rollin, you saw him using every inch of that racetrack. How much of that was trying to get heat in the tires versus just simply trying to cool his nerves as he tries to set up now and hold off just behind him a flurry of activity that we are inevitably about to see, and whether or not he's able to hold it off will determine whether or not he is able to start out in this season exactly as it happened for him in the 2018 Mazda Club Racer Shootout, and that is getting the win. We will see the green and the white flag at the same time, Nick. We are about to see a shootout here to determine this first race winner.
Just 1 lap, that's all, around this racetrack.
Keep it clean, guys, right?
We'll see. Certainly, the racing has been phenomenal as Celine Rollin makes his way to the last couple corners here where he'll take the left-hander onto the front straightaway and race up the hill, where these drivers are going to battle it out for 1 lap. It is Rollin Bickers, Ortiz, Dean, and Rager, the top 5. Stout, Palermo, Sparks, Oxner, and Jensen, the top 10. 1 to go, Jake Queries. We see the green flag.
Get a good look, I was going to say, at that single file, because it's not going to last that way for long. Really good restart, really good jump now for Roland, but he swings it wide. Does that mean that Ortiz, for example, is going to be able to go to the bottom of the racetrack and make up ground? He's got all kinds of activity. Nico Rager is there as well, so too is Dean. But so far, so good for that rookie through turn number 1.
This is exactly what Roland wants to see. Get a good start as we see him beating and banging about a little further back for 6th and 7th as Hernan Palermo goes wide. He's got heavy damage to the left rear, but up front, Jake, this is perfect for Roland as the drivers 2nd through 6th run nose to tail. He's able to get away through the S's.
Inside the final minute of this race, so this is going to be it indeed. They saw the green and white flag, and what a restart for Celine Roland. Now, just behind him, that's the car of Brian Ortiz. He finds himself in 2nd position. Is he going to be able to make the move? That's what we are wondering at this point. We talked about Palermo and the incident there. Looks like it happened right on the restart. All of a sudden, somebody caught wind of that bumper. That knocked out Palermo, who had a really good race, was running in 7th. But Roland now starting to get activity from Brian Ortiz.
And here's the spot. Ortiz has to get a good run out of this corner because here's the long back straightaway. It's set up, Jake, the most amount of passes that we've seen all day. Ortiz took a shallow line, shallow entry into that corner. A lot of times that doesn't set you up for a great run down the back straightaway. But boy, he is closing on the rookie as they set up for the left-hander on the final lap.
He is going to try to go to the inside, and guess what? Brian Ortiz got a little bit loose, but he was able to hold on. Ortiz now gets past that rookie, put Brian Ortiz into 1st position.
And here comes Roland. He's going to take a look to the inside as they snake their way around this track here in Austin, Texas. Roland stands on the throttle. He's going to push Ortiz wide. They're still door to door here in Austin, battling for the win in round 1.
It seemed like simple geometry fell into the form of Brian Ortiz and favored him because they ran out of lines. One last look now it's going to take for Celine to try to make that move. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. Brian Ortiz right now holding him off, Nick.
And you got to keep an eye on Rager as well, running right there in 3rd as he doesn't have anyone challenging him. The rookie, Roland, all over the back of that green and white car for Brian Ortiz. They'll swing right wide over the red and white curbing as they come up on the last couple corners out of the final corner, Jake. They're both getting sideways, heading for the start-finish line.
Oh, and Roland got loose, all kinds of activity, and guess what? That clears the way for Brian Ortiz without any sort of danger in front of him to take the checkered flag. Brian Ortiz has won the first race here at the Circuit of the Americas in the Battery Temple Global Mazda MX-5 Cup. What a race today, Nick.
Roland got super sideways. We saw that car crab walking at the exit of the corner. He actually lost the 2nd spot to Nico Rager, who jumps all the way to 2nd. Here's that replay, the final look out of the corner, Jake. All those drivers, as soon as they got those cars rotated, were quick on the gas. That got a lot of them sideways. Rager jumps into 2nd, but boy, tip the cap to Brian Ortiz as he holds them all off to win round number 1 here in Austin.
Boy, and what heartache for Roland, who had it right there, and then all of a sudden with that activity, Nico Rager able to get by him too. What did we talk about though, Nick? It's no discredit at all to that young man, but simply when it comes down to it, the final turn, and you realize just who was able to make that pounce. And a learning opportunity, and this is a driver that we're going to hear about as we see Brian Ortiz celebrating, but I got a feeling that we just watched 5 or 6 drivers we're going to talk about all season long.
And you know, we talked all about the rookie, and he deserves all the credit in the world as Celine Roland, I think, blew us all away today here in Austin. But the story for Brian Ortiz, again, we talked about it, Jake. You were out in Laguna Seca. He took a horrifying ride as he flipped 2 or 3 times to end his season. To come and start 2018 with a win is just a spectacular story for Brian Ortiz, who goes to victory lane. He's from Puerto Rico, driving for Copeland Motorsports. Just a great win for him to kick off the season.
I know in talking to Mo when we were at Laguna Seca, and Brian Ortiz had that accident there, and fortunately was okay, but Mo was able to look at the numbers and saw just how many people in Puerto Rico, and we know everything that the folks in Puerto Rico have gone through over the last several months, you know, with the storm down there and all of the rebuild in Puerto Rico. And this is a young man in Brian Ortiz that you watch taking that victory lap, Nick, that had a lot of people rooting for him down there, and you could see Mo was able to look at it and see just the number of followers and viewers that were coming in from Puerto Rico watching this series and watching that driver, Brian Ortiz, who starts off the year exactly the way every driver wanted to, and that was with that win.
Yep, it's quite a story. Here's the rundown of how they finished, as Ortiz will make his way back to pit lane victorious here in Austin. It's Brian Ortiz, your winner. Nico Reger comes home in second. The rookie Roland finishes third. Pole sitter John Dean finishes fourth. Joey Bickers got shuffled from second to fifth on that final lap. He still comes home with the top five. Robert Stout was quiet, efficient, but never really a factor for the win as he comes home in sixth. Nathaniel Sparks probably needed a few more laps to get up front as he comes home in seventh. Luke Oxner comes home in the 8th position. Keith Jensen finishes 9th. Ryan Hall rounds out the top 10. Todd Lamb finishes 11th here today. Eric Curran is 12th. Kyle Kimball 13th. Robert Newalker is 14th. Hernan Palermo had that damage. He came home in the 15th spot. Matt Kasinikin is 16th. Austin Allison finishes 17th. Zach Lee comes home in the 18th position. Charlie Bellardo finishes 19th. Alex Machora is 20th. Brooks Leal finishes 21st. 22nd was John Morrow. 23rd was Joe Da Silva. 24th, Alex Walensky. 25th, Nigel Faulkner. Ashton Harrison finishes 26th today. Racer Kashima was 27th. 28th goes to Michael Globe. 29th to Albert Lukuzik. And then the drivers that had problems today, Ari Strauss finishes 30th. Ted Saleem finishes 31st. Brian Henderson comes home in the 32nd position. And Ryan Marine, you are standing by with our winner of round number 1, Brian Ortiz from Puerto Rico.
That's right. A very happy Brian Ortiz indeed. You finished last season on your roof. You start this season with the win here at Circuit of the Americas. Can you take us through the pass you made for the lead there on that final lap following the restart?
Well, first of all, I want to say hi to everybody in Puerto Rico. They're watching this race. They've been very supportive. They've been through a lot since the hurricane. So I want to say hi to all of you. And what can I say? Excellent race. I did a couple of mistakes with third. I'm having issue with third. But I had a great car, great team, great sponsor, Bella Racing, Bella Group. Carlos, thank you for believing in me. This is definitely a great opportunity, and I'm very, very happy for sure.
How much were you thinking during that caution, planning your move to try and get the lead? You knew there wasn't going to be much time left.
Yeah, I knew I had a great setup on the car, so on corners I was very good. So it was just a matter of setting the draft in the back straight. And I had everything I planned. It went better than that. So I'm very happy. The race was very, very entertaining, and I'm so happy for my family, my mother, my father, everybody.
Congratulations. Best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Let's do it again.
Ryan, appreciate it. Congratulations again to Brian Ortiz, Nick Yeoman. Quite a race to be able to call here to start off this season.
A lot of fun to kick off the season. We kind of bragged about it at the beginning of it. We guaranteed that the racing is going to be fantastic in the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup presented by BF Goodrich. I think you can go anywhere around the world. You're not going to top this. There's a lot of great series, but boy, the one that Mazda and Battery Tender and BF Goodrich puts on, if this is a sign of things to come, Jake, we're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to have a lot of fun with Mark Janes tomorrow calling race number 2.
Mother